Hey guys, and welcome to episode 4 of Weight Loss Real Talk, where all I do is cut the silence and skip the BS. Today's topic: all weight loss methods are pretty much the same. So let's talk about it. When it comes to losing weight, something that we need to really understand is that all these methods that are out there are, if you think about it, getting you to accomplish the same thing. Whether that's you doing intermittent fasting, following 16-8, OMAD, alternate day fasting, or juice fasting, or doing a specific workout, drinking a specific drink, eating a specific food, whatever it is, no matter what it's called, no matter if it's free or if it's something you have to pay for, they are all just trying to get you to be in a deficit, whether you choose to do it the simple way or to do it a fancy way. Now, what are the methods that are out there? So if we go ahead and do a little bit of research, we'll just niche down to intermittent fasting, since there's so many methods out there that are also not even related to fasting. So list of fasting schedules. Alright, so here, first thing to come up, coming from medicalnewstoday.com, 6 ways to do intermittent fasting, which, just so you guys know, there's way more than that. But anyway, fast for 12 hours a day. So let's sort of attack that first, and we'll go down this list. I'll just explain why they all have the potential to work. So, fast for 12 hours a day. So first of all, why is it that fasting for 12 hours a day can help a person lose weight? It is because if you know how to be mindful of what you are eating for the 12 hours of the day that you are eating, you're gonna lose weight because you're going to be in a deficit for 12 straight hours. It's really that simple. There's no secret behind the fast. There's no magic happening. It's just because of the fact that you are in a deficit. Now, let's actually go further into this. If we look at number 2, we have fasting for 16 hours, which, by the way, guys, if you are curious about this website that I am reading from, I'm going to leave a link to this exact website down in the description that you can read on your own time. So, number 2, fasting for 16 hours, which is the most common IF schedule. Why does that work? Fasting for 16 hours works because your eating window is getting even shorter. And the shorter your eating window, the less time you have to eat. Why is that a good thing? Because you won't have enough time to overeat if you do it correctly. Even though you have a shorter eating window and it is just 8 hours, I could still technically eat enough to be in a surplus within 8 hours. It's relatively easy. People do it all the time, which is why sometimes fasting for 16 hours may not work. And the same thing can be said for every other method, not just this specific method right here. Because again, what you need is a deficit. You can do that in a number of ways. All right, number 3, fasting for 2 days a week. This one I'm not particularly a fan of, and I actually think it's kind of one of the worst methods you could choose. Because check this out, people following the 5-2 diet eat standard amounts of healthful food for 5 days. In other words, even though they say healthful, they're basically saying eat like you usually do for 5 days of the week and reduce your caloric intake or be in a calorie deficit for the other 2 days. This one, yes, has the potential to work in terms of reaching your weight loss goals, but has a very high potential to make you gain weight, especially if you're not used to making healthy food choices. For example, for the 5 days that you're not reducing your caloric intake and basically being given the opportunity to eat like you usually do, if you have a garbage diet to begin with, those 2 days that you are in a deficit will be absolutely pointless. You're most likely going to be in a surplus for the other 5 days, making this method useless. Well, not completely useless, but useless for the most part, because people don't understand the correct approach to this. So in order to make this work, number 1, I'm going to keep repeating it over and over again, but you need to be in a deficit. If you can, every day. And if you can't, most days. So the reason this usually doesn't work is because when they are told that they can eat like they usually do for the first 5 days, they assume that means you can eat whatever you want, even though it says here to eat standard amounts of healthful food, which is the right thing to do. But sometimes people don't understand that even though you eat healthful food, you can still end up being in a surplus regardless of you eating healthful food, which leads me to another point of people not counting their calories. I don't have a voice today. So anyway, I've been spending way too much time on this one, and we're barely on number 3. So yeah, not exactly a fan of the 5-2 diet. Alright, number 4, alternate day fasting. another one I am not particularly a fan of because it's pretty much the same thing as the 5-2 diet, where there are some days you fast and some days you don't. So the reason this works is because on the days that you are fasting, hopefully you're putting yourself in a deficit and still being mindful of your diet. And the other days that you're not fasting, you can essentially eat whatever you want. But the smart thing to do is to still be mindful of what you're eating on those days that you aren't fasting, which people fail to do a majority of the time, which is why I'm not a fan of this method, because it just doesn't make sense. Like, if there's a day where you fast and you're being mindful of what you're eating and being in a deficit, why not just do that every day? Like, I can understand that maybe following a routine can get exhausting, especially if you do it for a long time, but even then, it's still the right thing to do. I can understand taking breaks, but when you take breaks, you're essentially slowing down your progress willingly, which to me is, I don't know. So, number 5, a weekly 24-hour fast, which is fasting completely for 1 or 2 days a week, known as the Eat, Stop, Eat diet, involves eating no food for 24 hours at a time. Many people fast from breakfast to breakfast or lunch to lunch. Now this works because when you fast for 24 hours for 1 to 2 days a week, those are guaranteed days that you are in a deficit because you are forced to not eat anything for those days, which is good. Again, this is kind of like the 5-2 diet, basically, where I have the right to ask, if you are fasting for 24 hours for that 1 day or 2 days, what are you doing for the other 5? And if you are still being smart for those other 5 days, this method's pretty darn good, to be honest. But if you decide to give in to your temptations and decide to screw it up those other 5 days, this method is useless. Number 6, the warrior diet. It says the warrior diet is a relatively extreme form of intermittent fasting. The warrior diet involves eating very little, usually just a few servings of raw fruit and vegetables during a 20-hour fasting window, then eating 1 large meal at night. The eating window is usually only around 4 hours. The reason why this works is because, first of all, you're eating very little with just a few servings of raw fruit. Well, let me just say, the first reason is because you're eating very little. In other words, being in a caloric deficit. Number 2, you're eating just a few servings of raw fruit and vegetables. Reason that works is because those are low-calorie foods. And number 3, you only have a 4-hour eating window, which is usually not enough time to eat enough to put you in a caloric surplus. So that's why this method can work. Now, a reason that this might not work is because of that 1 large meal at night. My question is, how large are we talking? Because you don't have to go that large to put you in a caloric surplus, which is risky and something that I think you should just skip out on if you were to follow this method, because that can easily, again, like I said, put you in a surplus. With that said, the point of all 6 of these weight loss methods, and not just all 6 of these, every single weight loss method that is out there to ever exist is just trying to put you in a caloric deficit. So if I gave you an entire list of weight loss methods and gave you the option to choose, realistically, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter which one you decide to go with, because the end goal of that specific method is to put you in a calorie deficit. So anyway, I think I've said everything that I needed to say. Hopefully you guys learned something, and if you did, go ahead and let me know down in the comments below. And with that said, I will see you guys in the next one.